Steph, who has called into the show before, twice actually, both times, really fantastic topics of conversation. So I'm really excited to hear from you this time, Steph. What do you got for me?
Hey, so I'm doing fine, and I had three things that are kind of linked together that we could talk about. The first one is about solipsism, in particular, not just the problem of solipsism, but addressing things from an intra-solipsism worldview. And this has applications into things like virtual godhood and consent. So where do we want to start unpacking all that?
Okay, well, so I'd be more excited to start on the solipsism thing, but then we had that earlier call, and that kind of wore me out a little bit. I don't know what virtual godhood means, though, and I would love for you to explain that to me.
Yeah, so you can approach it as kind of a more definitional thing, but in general, something that is virtual is something that doesn't tangibly exist in the physical world. And most commonly it's used with computers. There's also virtual and quantum mechanics, but we're not going to go there. No quantum woo.
Yeah. I always have to make that a rule of the show, but anyway, go ahead.
No, so a virtual god would be a thinking agent. You could interchange that with mind, which has a complete control over your experience of reality.
So it's sort of like a god in the brains and vats situation.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it goes back to solipsism a little bit. Unfortunately, if you didn't want to go there, it drags you down.
I get you. No, yeah, okay, so it's a brain outside of ourselves, sort of a consciousness that affects reality but isn't in reality. Am I understanding this at all?
Matrix.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we may have to go down the solipsism route.
All right. I trust you can take us down there respectfully, Steph. So let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah. So for everyone who's listening, so solipsism is a problem or a position that acknowledges that though we can acknowledge our own existence because we can think, the only way to validate your senses is with your senses. And since you can't really appeal to circular, there's no foundation for anything else existing except for you. Most people, even acknowledging this, choose to ignore it for utility purposes and live their life as if there are other agents and that your senses are an acceptable way to interact with reality. I think that's a really good, easy, quick way to sum it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, so
once you get to that position...
Go ahead.
So once you get to that position of solipsism, you enter this conundrum of intra-solipsism, which is you have purposely chosen to rely on your senses, and even though your mind is the only arguably deductive way to arrive at conclusions, we have to use inductive means to determine almost anything that is worthwhile in the world besides really basic
Yeah, so in other words, solipsism, the hard problems of solipsism, really, as far as I know, there hasn't been a satisfactory explanation for. I've seen attempts, some of which I haven't read all the way through, from serious philosophers who have really tried to figure this stuff out. But yeah, it does seem that at the end of the day, we can't get past the fact that we are physical beings in a mind that may just all be in a mind in a vat. But, the thing I always bring up is, even if that's true, we can still look at patterns of our existence and we can still make predictions based off of those patterns. And really at the end of the day, for some people, that's what knowledge really is. It's the ability to predict things, or the ability to work on the things that and apply it to, reality, or at least maybe our perception of reality. Maybe it's not ultimate reality. Maybe it's not, whatever. But, if I can still work around the quote unquote world that I'm living in, I seem to be okay with that. I don't know if Susan and Nathaniel have anything to comment more.
I'd give myself more hair, I think. I think I was looking at my notes that I wrote for solipsism, and so I may have made a face when I was reading it, but I did miss the epistemological or metaphysical version of solipsism that I had written down, and then getting into like phenomenology and things like that. But I don't know if that's part of this like conversation or not.
Yeah, well, I guess I was wondering how solipsism tied into virtual godhood.
I am excited for that one, actually.
Yeah,
because I want to learn.
Yeah. So if you operate under this assumption of solipsism, or that you can really only verify yourself in your own mind, it brings up a troubling implication if you're using inductive systems like we use for science and to functionally live our everyday lives. If you pick up a pencil and you drop it, you always expect it to drop. This has always been the case, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. So if you were to encounter someone who is in a solipsistic model that you could demonstrate that, how would you be able to react to that?
I guess even if they're living a solipsistic model and I drop a pen in front of them and it falls, like that seems to demonstrate, well, I guess we can't ultimately prove it demonstrates a shared reality or anything, but in their worldview, maybe they can get something out of it, right? I'm not sure maybe if this is where you're wanting to take this or if I'm even answering correctly.
Yeah. No, yeah. So you bring up a good point. It's really hard to imagine as a human, another thinking agent who's also a human who could be trapped in a solipsistic model, because that would imply that their experience of reality was completely contrary and not connected to your own at all.
Yeah. Despite
so
rage, I'm
this
still
would be
just a rat in a cage.
Trapped in the matrix. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The Matrix.
It's the Matrix, man. We're all stuck in the
We're
Matrix.
the first ones to ever consider the Matrix.
I mean,
what just happened.
So
it becomes a little bit kind of pop culture and Hollywood to look at it from the Matrix. But once you start to bring it more to reality, we have more experience with this with virtual worlds or artificial intelligence, and it brings up how do we demonstrate that if we have some thinking agent or something that demonstrates at least the ability to respond to external or perceived stimuli, how can we not extrapolate that to, if not prove, at least increase the probability or the likelihood that we ourselves aren't trapped in a solipsistic model?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know how to answer that. Smarter people than me have really tried to figure something like that out. But yeah, there is a solipsistic model that seems to work on our understanding of logic and reasoning that seems to, it would imply that we're stuck and we can't do anything about it. So if that's true, then we're screwed. But there's also no way to verify if it's true or not because we would be in that model. So don't know. What do you guys think?
This is one of those situations where I think it's perfectly fine to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think
I'm sorry, I can't be more engaging.
I think the word "yet" is a especially because the metaphysical models of solipsism, which get into transcendental stuff, that it would be possible to discern that, not right now, at least yet. But wow, that would
that will be
interesting. Yeah,
maybe we're all actually anime protagonists, and we are simply the dream of a filler episode. I don't know. It could be a lot of things. Yeah. We're butterflies dreaming that we're philosophers, as they like to say. But Steph, I know you have more you want to say, and I know you have more great topics to talk about. But unfortunately, I have two other callers. I spent too much time probably on some of the first couple calls, and so I want to make sure I get to these guys with enough time. But thanks again for calling in, and thank you for emailing me too. Yeah, absolutely. As always, you bring great content to the show, and just great at explaining stuff. Steph's really good at that. So, sure. Yeah. But I can tell the stress on Nathaniel's face. It's the same stress I feel every time somebody brings up solipsism. It's like, yeah, man. Whoa.
Of all
makes your brain hurt.
Of all the philosophicals, conversations, things to look into, that one is my favorite. with that being said, 0 of them are my favorite.
Right. I was about to say that's the most sarcastic answer you've ever given me. But yeah, we got hit with the double whammy tonight too, which wasn't great. But it is what it is. People want to talk about it. We talk about it.
Yeah.
And some, because you never know. There's always people that get something out of it. And I got a little bit more out of it tonight, actually, talking to Steph just there, talking about virtual godhood. That's kind of interesting.